So, as you may have noticed, the end of last year, beginning of this year, there was not a top 10 video games of 2022 video or podcast or whatever form it was going to take. There was nothing posted. I wanted to remedy that by putting out something quick. We're halfway through this year. This year I do fully intend to put out that list. Last year things were a little crazy at the end of the year and beginning of the year, and I never got around to it. So I did not want this list. I did make one. I just didn't make the content. So I did want to get that out, and I did want to do something for it. And so that's what this video will be. It will not be big and expansive in an hour and a half like my previous one, but it will be a list, and I'll say a little something about each game. We'll go ahead and start with number 10, which is Domekeeper. Domekeeper is an interesting, sort of refreshing take on the roguelike genre that combines some elements of like a gathering game and some elements of a Metroidvania and some elements of a roguelike. It's probably one of two games on this list that you could recommend to people who are maybe would not even call themselves gamers, and they would still have a pretty good time with it. There's not really anything else to say about it other than that. It's just a really nice kind of way. It's one of those games you can sit down and you can have a 15-minute, half an hour session with, and then walk away from and go take care of other responsibilities and come back to it another time. Number 9 is Vault of the Void. That's Vault, V-A-U-L-T, of the Void. It's made by one person who runs the game and announces content updates and those sorts of things on the game's community Discord. If you are a card game player and you are someone who likes deck building as a main component of why you enjoy card games, then you need to check out this game. You need to play Vault of the Void. It's very, very good, and it has a few extra layers on top of the card deck building that play into the way you build a deck in a run that are very unique and very clever. And I think it's probably one of the few games since Slay the Spire to actually make significant advancements to that particular formula and like game design for that genre. It's very good. I highly recommend Vault of the Void. Number 8 is Fire Emblem Three Hopes. Now, I don't really like Dynasty Warriors games. I have enjoyed a few like Warriors Orochi over the years, or like the Dynasty Warriors Zelda, Hyrule Warriors. Maybe some of you don't know, but they also make a Fire Emblem version of Dynasty Warriors. There was one that came out previously. I think it was just called Fire Emblem Warriors or something like that. This is the next game. It's basically Dynasty. What if Fire Emblem Three Houses, but Dynasty Warriors? And for whatever reason, cramming Fire Emblem through a Dynasty Warriors pipe just totally works for me. I love everything about this game. I love its combat. I love its class system. I love its weapons. It's just pure, unadulterated fun, and that's something I really enjoy about it. I also think that it solves my problem with the Dynasty Warriors games, and one of my main problems in that game being that the sense of progression felt very very vapid. It was all just kind of tied to, oh, well, the better weapon makes the numbers go up, and then the numbers going up means that I can do the harder difficulties, which are basically just the same thing over and over and over and over again. There's really not significant or meaningful difference between harder versions of the missions within most Dynasty Warriors games. Not all, but most Dynasty Warriors games. So the sense of progression being tied to like all of these Fire Emblem-esque relationship systems and unlock systems and all those sorts of things, I think really helps give some substance to the progression systems that are in this particular Dynasty Warriors Fire Emblem game. So Fire Emblem Three Hopes is number 8. Number 7 is Cursed to Golf. Cursed to Golf is a roguelike. It is a sports game, and it is a Metroidvania game, all kind of in one. Maybe even a card game. If you wanted to make that argument, I would entertain it, but it's not fully a card game. It is just delightful. Out of all of the games that are on the list this year for 2022, Cursed to Golf is the one that is the most enjoyable to play. It's just a delight. It has some of the best music that was released for any game in 2022. The art style is beautiful sprite graphics. It's not highly replayable like a lot of other roguelikes are. And the reason for that is because it's basically just a single-player campaign. It takes about 20 hours or so, and once you play through it, you're kind of done. There's not a level editor. There's not random generation as part of the levels or anything like that. So it could use that. That would really help the game kind of live beyond its initial release. But for what it is and its scope at release, it is just a wonderful game. It really is. You are basically a soul sent to golf hell, and you're trying to play your way back up to the real world. And you encounter a lot of really interesting characters along the way that you have kind of 1v1 golf matches with. And it's just awesome. It's just a really cool game. Number 6 is Warhammer 40k Darktide. Now, this game had a rough beta, it had a rough launch, it had a rough post-launch, and it has basically spent every month since it came out with people being upset at it in one form or another. I think some of the criticism is deserved. I think some of it is not. And or an overreaction or blown out of proportion. But basically, this is Fat Shark, who makes Warhammer Vermintide and Warhammer Vermintide 2. This is their take on the Warhammer 40k universe. And it is, in a lot of ways, it's kind of their masterpiece. In other ways, it's kind of their death knell. So, I guess as a study, it's actually quite interesting. It's interesting in that sense. But as far as the experience of playing it goes, if you can get past the kind of weird progression issues the game has, and like player power, and how crafting is not as great in this game, even though I don't know. Fat Shark fans seem to have a really short memory, because anyone who played Vermintide or Vermintide 2 will remember that crafting was pretty ass in those games when they first came out too. So I think Darktide is in a much better place today than it was then, but the reason this game is on the list is not any of that. The reason it's on the list is because out of all of the games that came out last year, Warhammer 40k Darktide was the game that was the best at really having a singular focus on atmosphere and setting and audio design and everything, just kind of contributing to this overall attempt to really put the player in the world or in the universe that the game is set in. And that's the thing that Darktide does really, really well. It does it really masterfully, probably better than any other first-person shooter game I've played in the last 5 years. And I've played quite a few of those. Warhammer 40k Darktide is, like, if you didn't like Vermintide or Vermintide 2, you are not going to like this game, so don't even bother. But if you are a fan of the Warhammer universe, if you are okay with first-person shooters, particularly horde shooters, then this is definitely a game that you should check out. So number 5, anyone who knows me, this will probably not be a surprise at all, is Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. I mean, what can you say? It basically takes everything that's really great about Monster Hunter Rise, and it's more. It's better. It's more. They iterate on stuff they needed to iterate on. It kept the formula interesting. and it's just great. I think the new monsters they added in the G rank expansion are awesome. Malzeno, I hope, comes back at some point for sure. I liked the final boss of this game, I think, way better than I liked the final boss of Base Rise, or even Base Monster Hunter World, for that matter. I think Monster Hunter World Iceborne's final boss was something quite special, but the final boss for Sunbreak is also very good. And yeah, I mean, if you like Monster Hunter Rise, there was no reason not to get Sunbreak. Sunbreak continued the wire bug and silk bind moves and all that kind of stuff, and added more systems and layers on top of that. It was really solid. It was really solid. That game just got its last content update, so pretty soon it will sort of be put out to pasture, and it will just get a cycle of old seasonal events and those sorts of things, and then hopefully we get some news about Monster Hunter World 2 pretty soon. That'd be awesome. Number 4 is another Warhammer game, and this is Total War Warhammer 3. Now the base, Total War Warhammer is kind of it's an interesting game to talk about in relation to these top 10 lists, because they kind of have two components, starting with Total War Warhammer 2. And that is the main campaign for that specific Total War Warhammer. So there's the campaign map for Total War Warhammer 1 that focuses on a specific area of the Warhammer fantasy world, Warhammer 2 that focuses on a different area, and then Warhammer 3 that focuses on a different area. But Creative Assembly also has, as part of this, a sort of mega campaign map that combines all of these maps into one huge map that you can play all of the legendary lords and races and whatnot from all of the games together. And that is where I think, and that also came out finally this year. It was in beta for a long time, but it finally came out this year. And that, I think, is where Warhammer 3 really shines as a technical achievement for sure, but also just a grand strategy and tactical battle sim masterpiece. The sheer amount of content and variety that you can experience on that map, and how replayable things are, and it's just mind-blowing. Not only that, but I happen to think the Warhammer Fantasy universe is, I mean, it's not particularly philosophically profound or anything like that, but as a fantasy design, there's some cool and interesting stuff in there that I think paints lines and in colors that are different than other franchises in the same genre. Total War Warhammer 3 is the last Warhammer game that's going to be in this kind of main line of Total War Warhammers. So where they go after this remains to be seen. They'll continue making their historical games. Some people surmise that maybe they'll take a stab at doing a Warhammer 40k Total War, which would be insane completely. Or that the next Warhammer Total War game will actually be set in the new Warhammer Fantasy universe of the Age of Sigmar, which would be also pretty interesting, because it's different content, different races, and emphasis on different aspects of what happened in the fantasy universe, and sort of a reboot in a lot of respects. But yeah, Total War Warhammer 3, really kick-ass strategy game, lots of content, overwhelming to someone just trying to pick it up, but not insurmountably so. If you are a fan of strategy games, if you are a fan of map strategy games in particular, and you've played other Total War games, it's one you should probably pick up. Number 3, and the top 3 changed quite a lot before I finally settled on an order. Number 3 is Triangle Strategy. Triangle Strategy I played through at a really weird point in my life in 2022, and it's probably the game that made me cry the most in 2022. But not only is it a solid tactics game, but it tells a lot of stories that just really resonated with me on a personal level. Um, there, there's a lot of focus on character in that game. I think the writing is really, really good. The tactics in the game are pretty solid. It tries a few new things that I think work out pretty well. It's a JRPG that kind of strips out some of the annoying long-term grinding you have to do. Um, in some ways, it's kind of like the best of the old school Final Fantasy JRPGs with a little bit of tactics ogre and its own kind of well, I mean, that studio is known for its Octopath Traveler and those sorts of things. So you expect the writing to be good, and the writing was good. I think there the thing that people should play it for is there's a series of choices you have to make throughout that game that kind of alter how it goes. So everyone kind of ends up having their own, not like unique to the person, but their own sort of emotional journey and outcome with the game, that I think is special. I think it's memorable for you when you play through it. And it's a beautiful game in every sense of the word. Visually, musically, artistically, emotionally, it's wrought with sadness. It's got joy. It's got celebration. It's got defeat and trials and tribulations. It's just a very sort of complete package in that way. I think if you take your time, go through the game at your own pace, don't force decisions, you'll find yourself pretty invested in the characters and pretty invested in the arc of that world's story. And it could have just as easily have been number one on the list, but I settled for number 3. Number 2 is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, I played Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, and did not finish them. In fact, I didn't play very much of 2 at all because I found the main protagonist to be a little annoying. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is, for the same reasons I really like Triangle Strategy, I really liked Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That game also made me cry a fair number of times. The story that game tells does not pull any punches at all. I think some people are going to roll their eyes and go, oh, another anime-esque JRPG. And there are certainly elements of its design and art and music and stuff like that are very much that. So if you don't like that, then steer clear of this game. But if you're someone who does like that, or someone who's indifferent towards it, or can work through that to sort of grab the gem that is this game's storytelling, I would highly recommend you do so. It is, again, beautiful in every sense of the word. I mean, the journeys that some of these characters go on, some of them were shocking to me, honestly. Like, there was stuff that happened in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that I just did not expect to happen, straight up. And being able to play a game and be surprised like that in this day and age it's something you remember. It's become something that I think is special for a lot of people. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a game that it's gotten DLC since it came out, and I finished it, so I need to go back and play some of that. But it's a game that will stick with me for a long time, I think. Number 1, oh baby, is Vampire Survivors. That's right. I put a video game at number 1 on this motherfucking list. Go ahead and demonetize me, YouTube. I don't care. It's not like I get ad money for any of the videos I post anyway. Wow. Vampire Survivors. What a game. Jesus. I don't think I need to say anything else. if you don't have Vampire Survivors, just go buy it. Just go get it right now. Go buy Vampire Survivors, and it's 2 DLC. They're like $2. The game is like $3 or $4, and the DLC is like, just go buy it. Just go buy it. It'll cost you as much as two gallons of gas in California, anyway. What a motherfucking video game this thing is, man. Brilliant. Mwah. Just Ponkel struck gold with this one. It's so good. And I'm not going to say anything about it. It speaks for itself. I don't need to defend it. I don't need to make the case. If you play this game and don't like it, you probably also don't like the Muppets and Donuts, and you're dead to me. So that's it. That's the list. That's the top 10 video games of 2022. I'll be doing something a little more polished, similar to 2021 for 2023, and look forward to that. Otherwise, thank you all for watching and listening. Have a good rest of the month, good rest of the year, and play some kick-ass games. See ya.